The sky above Tyrannus Prime was a funeral shroud of fire and ruin. Cities that once gleamed with human ambition now lay in smoldering heaps, their streets overrun by the cybernetic monstrosities of the Karath Dominion. Screams echoed from the underground bunkers where the last remnants of the human population hid, waiting for the inevitable: capture, enslavement, or worse. Above the ruined world, the Dominion's warships hung like jagged blades, their twisted hulls pulsing with eerie red light. The Karath had taken thousands of worlds. Tyrannus Prime was just another name to be added to their growing empire. Warlord Vrykos stood upon the balcony of his obsidian fortress, watching the final stages of his conquest unfold. His warriors moved with mechanical precision, sweeping through the streets, dragging prisoners in chains to the towering slave spires. His empire thrived on suffering, and today it would feast. Then the signal came. Deep beneath the lifeless crust of a dead world, light pulsed through the forgotten halls of an ancient tomb fortress. Machines, dormant for centuries, roared back to life as power surged through veins of black iron. Sealed vaults, entombed beneath layers of dust and time, groaned as their locks disengaged. Inside, the Warborn lords awoke. Darius Voss's vision swam as the cryo seals over his body shattered, sending clouds of freezing vapor billowing into the chamber. His limbs felt heavy, his armor locking into place around him as he stepped forward, his boots slamming against the steel floor with the weight of a god returning to earth. Across the chamber, dozens of others stirred, figures clad in battle plate, as black as the void, their eyes burning with the light of long-dormant augmetics. He had not expected to wake again. The Warborn lords were meant to be legends, terrors of another era, warriors too dangerous to be left unchecked. When humanity had feared them, it had buried them in the dark, sealing them away in iron sarcophagi. And yet, the call had come. A distress beacon, a cry for help. The past rushed back like a storm. Darius remembered the wars, the endless battles against the Dominion, the bloodied stars, and then the silence, the betrayal. Humanity had feared them. Humanity had abandoned them. But now humanity was dying, and it called upon the ghosts of its past. Darius flexed his fingers, feeling the power of his warplate surging through him. His armor, his second skin, recognized him instantly, whispering data feeds into his mind. Around him, the other Warborn lords tested their weapons, ancient tools of destruction humming with renewed life. Riven, the battle chaplain, stepped forward, his crimson war cloak trailing behind him. His voice, deep and resonant, cut through the silence. The beacons burn again. Humanity calls. Do we answer? Darius turned, his eyes locking onto the star map that flickered into existence before him. Tyrannus Prime. A world on the edge of extinction. A world waiting for salvation. He exhaled, his voice like the grinding of stone. We were forged for war. He turned to the gathered warriors, their armor reflecting the crimson glow of the awakening tomb. Let war take us. Engines thundered to life. The march had begun. The dreadnought unyielding vow emerged from the abyss of deep space, like a beast of legend stirring from its grave. A leviathan of black iron and battle scars. Its hull bore the sigils of a forgotten era, symbols of humanity's old war legions, now nothing more than relics to those who had abandoned them. Its engines burned like the eyes of an avenging god, pushing it toward the doomed world of Tyrannus Prime. Inside the command deck, Darius Voss stood before a massive war table, the glowing projection of Tyrannus Prime flickering in the air before him. Tactical data streamed in, the orbital blockade, the slave spires rising from the ruined cities, the Dominion warships coiled around the planet like a nest of vipers. The odds were, as always, against them. It didn't matter. The enemy has total planetary control, Revenant said, his voice steady as he analyzed the feed. Standard Dominion doctrine. Kill or enslave all resistance, strip the world of resources, then move on. Darius's gauntleted fingers curled into a fist. Not this time. Across the bridge, the Warborn lords readied themselves. Even now, battle chants hummed through the halls, low and reverent. Weapons were sharpened, armor plates secured, servo motors hissed as augmetic limbs flexed in anticipation of the coming slaughter. A junior officer, one of the ship's few mortal crew, hesitated before stepping forward. His uniform was crisp, but his face betrayed his uncertainty. "Lord Captain," with respect, "we don't know what's waiting down there. We have no reinforcements, no fleet, just us." Darius turned his gaze upon the man, his presence alone enough to make the officer swallow hard. Then he spoke, his voice edged with steel. "We are the Warborn. We do not need an army. We are the army." A silence followed, heavy with understanding. Then Riven let out a grim chuckle, spoken like a man who has never lost a war. Darius smirked. "We've lost plenty. We just refuse to stay dead." A new alert flashed across the war table. The Dominion had noticed them. The blockade fleet was shifting, its vessels adjusting their formation like predators scenting unfamiliar prey. Their scanners had picked up the unyielding vow, but they hesitated. This ship was not like the others they had crushed before. Its design was ancient, predating even the Dominion's rule. It bore no imperial markings, no affiliation to the broken remnants of human governments. To them, it was an unknown factor. And unknown factors made commanders hesitate. That hesitation would be their undoing. "Begin the drop sequence," Darius ordered. "Tactical formations. We hit them before they understand what's happening." Throughout the dreadnought, the Warborn lords moved to their drop pods, massive reinforced cylinders lined with impact plating and retro thrusters. Each one could house a warrior, delivering them to the battlefield like a falling thunderbolt. Darius climbed into his pod, feeling the metal seals clamp around his armor. Data streams flooded his visor, battlefield calculations adjusting in real time. He exhaled slowly. Then, over the Vox, his voice echoed. "Warborn lords, we march." The launch alarms screamed. The pods fired. And the heavens over Tyrannus Prime split open. Tyrannus Prime's skies ignited as the Warborn lords fell like a storm of living weapons. The drop pods roared through the atmosphere, wreathed in fire, their descent screaming like the wrath of forgotten gods. On the surface below, the Karath Dominion's forces barely had time to react before the first impact struck. A shockwave tore through the ruined streets as the pods slammed into the ground, obliterating anything caught beneath them. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the pod doors exploded outward. Darius Voss stepped from the wreckage of his drop pod, Warhammer Annihilum held in a gauntleted fist. His armor, black as a starless night, was already dusted with ash from the ruined city around him. The air smelled of scorched stone and burning metal. He inhaled deeply, and his augmetics filtered the stench of death, leaving only the scent of war. All around him, more Warborn emerged. Battle Chaplain Riven tore his way from his pod, his crimson halberd glowing with an energy field so intense that the air crackled around it. Another pod crushed a Dominion troop transport beneath its bulk, then burst open to reveal two hulking warriors, their wrist-mounted cannons already spewing death. The Dominion forces scrambled to respond. Towering cybernetic enforcers, their bodies a fusion of metal and mutilated flesh, turned their heavy plasma rifles toward the new arrivals. Before they could fire, the Warborn were already moving. Darius sprinted forward, covering the distance between him and the nearest enemy in a blur of motion no normal human could match. His hammer swung in a brutal arc, connecting with a Dominion enforcer's chest. The impact sent a shockwave rippling outward, shattering the creature's torso in an eruption of twisted metal and steaming gore. To his left, Riven moved like a specter, his halberd carving through Dominion foot soldiers with ruthless efficiency. "They're too slow," he growled through the Vox. "This isn't a battle. It's a slaughter." More drop pods crashed down, each impact marking another Warborn lord entering the fray. Within moments, the once orderly Karath formations dissolved into chaos. Their foot soldiers were little more than cannon fodder, their war machines no match for the ancient fury of the Warborn. And yet this was only the beginning. A rumbling tremor shook the battlefield, and a massive Dominion walker, a four-legged war machine bristling with heavy cannons, emerged from the ruins. Its targeting array locked onto Darius. A low hum filled the air as its primary weapon charged. Darius narrowed his eyes. "I see you." The walker fired. A white-hot plasma bolt streaked toward him, but in the span of a heartbeat, he moved. Augmentics and centuries of combat experience turned his body into a blur. He dodged the shot, the ground where he stood a moment ago turning to molten slag. Then he launched himself forward. With inhuman speed, he leaped onto the walker's hull, his armored boots denting the metal as he climbed. Its turrets swiveled, trying to track him, but it was too late. Darius reached the top, raised Annihilum, and slammed the warhammer into the machine's core. The explosion ripped through the battlefield. The walker crumpled, its frame collapsing in a heap of burning wreckage. Darius stood atop the ruined war machine, scanning the battlefield as more Dominion forces fell before his brothers. The Warborn lords had returned to war, and war was where they belonged. Tyrannus Prime belonged to the dead. What little remained of its once great cities had been swallowed by ruin, its streets now battlefields, its towers reduced to skeletal husks. Yet amidst the devastation, something long thought impossible was happening. The Karath Dominion was losing ground. The Warborn lords carved through the Dominion's forces with a brutality unseen in centuries. Their black armor turned them into living nightmares, wading through fire and wreckage with the unshaken certainty of warriors who had never known defeat. Every strike of their weapons sent shockwaves through the battlefield. Every charge shattered Dominion lines like brittle glass. Darius Voss stood at the heart of the storm, Annihilum dripping molten slag as he surveyed the wreckage. What had begun as an ambush had turned into a massacre. Smoke billowed from the burning husks of Karath war machines, their shattered bodies sprawled across the ruins. But the battle was far from over. Voss. Riven's voice crackled through the Vox. "We've found survivors." Darius turned toward the transmission source. The battle chaplain had taken position near a collapsed hab block, where his warriors had forced open a rusted vault door. From within, gaunt human faces peered out, their eyes filled with disbelief. Survivors. They were a pitiful sight. Filthy, starved, their bodies marked with old wounds from Dominion cruelty. Yet as they looked upon the Warborn lords, something returned to their eyes, a flicker of what had been taken from them. Hope. Darius approached as one of the survivors, a man barely able to stand, stumbled forward. You're human," he choked out, as if he couldn't believe the words. "You're real." Darius knelt, gripping the man's shoulder. "We are Warborn," he said, "and we are here to end this." Tears welled in the survivor's eyes, but before he could speak, a warning flashed in Darius's visor. The Dominion was regrouping. A distant boom echoed through the ruins as the enemy counterattack began. Across the battlefield, towering warforms emerged from the dust, heavy battle automatons adorned with the twisted, agonized faces of past conquests, their limbs bristling with weaponry. Behind them, Dominion shock troops surged forward, bolstered by their monstrous reinforcements. "They're throwing everything they have at us," Riven muttered, readying his halberd. Darius rose to his full height. "Then they have made a mistake." The Warborn lords turned to meet the enemy head-on. They did not wait for the battle to come to them. They rushed forward, their massive forms smashing into the Dominion lines with the force of a collapsing star. The first warform raised its energy cannon, but before it could fire, Darius leaped onto its chest, driving Annihilum into its core. The impact tore through armor plating, and with a final heave, he ripped the machine apart in a shower of metal and gore. The Warborn lords fought like legends reborn. Riven's halberd spun in vicious arcs, carving a path through Dominion soldiers as their cybernetic limbs and weapons clattered to the ground. One Warborn tore the head from a carafe battle captain with his bare hands, hurling it into the ranks of the enemy like a challenge. And then, the impossible. A battle cry rose from the ruins. Not from the Warborn. From the survivors. The once broken humans of Tyrannus Prime, seeing their tormentors fall, seeing their chance at vengeance, rose. They seized weapons from fallen Dominion troops. Old rifles, scavenged blades, their own rage. A woman in tattered clothes lifted a plasma rifle and fired into the enemy's ranks, screaming as others followed her lead. Darius watched as humanity fought back. Hope had returned to Tyrannus Prime. And with it, the fires of war burned brighter than ever. The streets of Tyrannus Prime were no longer silent graves. They were battlegrounds of blood and fire, where the dead no longer lay still and the living refused to kneel. Once broken, once enslaved, the surviving humans now surged forward, their stolen weapons blazing, their war cries echoing off the ruined walls. The Warborn lords led them. Titanic figures wreathed in smoke and fury. Darius Voss drove into the enemy's ranks like a living warhead, annihilum cleaving through armor and flesh with equal devastation. Revenant fought beside him, his halberd burning through Dominion warriors like a blade through parchment. What had begun as a massacre had transformed into an uprising. The Dominion was reeling. Its foot soldiers, once so assured of their superiority, faltered before the impossible sight of humans rising against them. Their warforms, massive constructs of flesh and machine, crumpled under the sheer might of the Warborn. Victory was no longer a question of if, but when. Then the ground trembled. From the ruined skyline, a high-pitched screech rippled through the air, reverberating through the bones of every living thing. The sky darkened as a new shadow descended, a shape vast and monstrous, its form shifting like liquid metal. A Dominion dread titan. The massive war engine loomed over the battlefield, its body adorned with the fused remains of past conquests. It was a cathedral of suffering, a monument to the Dominion's cruelty. Its voice was a discordant shriek of countless stolen screams, a chorus of agony that drove terror into the hearts of mortals. Darius felt the momentary hesitation in the human survivors. Even with their newfound hope, they were still human. Fear was not so easily undone. "Hold the line," Darius bellowed, his voice cutting through the dread like a war drum. "Fear is for the enemy. We are Warborn." The Titan's chest split open, revealing a core of pulsating, writhing biomass. An amalgamation of harvested souls, their essence repurposed into a grotesque power source. Its cannons whined as they charged, the energy within them hot enough to vaporize entire regiments in an instant. It fired. A searing blast of crimson energy annihilated a city block, reducing centuries-old ruins to molten slag. The shockwave hurled humans and Dominion warriors alike through the air, the force sending even Warborn lords staggering. Darius rose to his feet, his armor scorched but intact. He turned his gaze to the towering abomination before him. It dies now. The Warborn lords moved as one, launching themselves toward the Titan like relentless juggernauts. They leaped onto its hull, tearing at the living metal, smashing through its outer defenses with hammers and blades. Revenant scaled its side, carving deep into its structure with every strike of his halberd. Darius drove forward, smashing through the Titan's lower plating, ripping a path toward its core. The beast shrieked, its cannon swiveling downward, locking onto him. It fired again. The explosion engulfed the street. For a moment, silence, smoke. Then, from the wreckage, Darius emerged. His armor glowed red-hot, his gauntlet crushed around the Titan's severed energy conduit. With a single motion, he hurled the massive weapon aside, his warhammer still gripped in his free hand. His voice carried over the battlefield like an executioner's verdict. This ends now. With a final, earth-shattering charge, the Warborn lord struck at the Titan's heart. The abomination let out one last terrible scream, then collapsed, its body crumbling into ruin. The Dominion had played its final card, and it had failed. The Dominion's dread titan lay in ruin, its grotesque body sprawled across the battlefield like a slain god. Its once burning core flickered and died, the last of its stolen souls freed in a whisper of vapor. The skies above Tyrannus Prime still burned, but the tide had turned. Across the shattered streets, the Karath forces faltered. Their iron discipline crumbled as they witnessed the impossible. Their most powerful war engine destroyed. Their dominion over this world shattered. For the first time in centuries, the conquerors were afraid. Darius Voss stood atop the Titan's smoldering corpse, his warhammer still clutched in his gauntleted fist. He turned, scanning the battlefield. Dominion soldiers fell back, scrambling toward their last fortified positions. A retreat. No, not a retreat, a rout. "We have them," Riven said over the Vox, his voice steady, but edged with hunger. "Shall we run them down?" Darius considered for only a moment. The Warborn lords did not believe in mercy. Not for slavers, not for monsters. "Burn them from this world," he ordered. The Warborn lords surged forward, relentless and merciless. The Karath commanders tried to regroup their forces, barking orders in their guttural tongue, but it was futile. The Warborn struck like a storm. One Warborn lord waded into a cluster of Dominion troopers, his wrist-mounted plasma caster reducing them to molten slag. Another carved through a warform's armored chassis, ripping its pulsing core free with his bare hands. The surviving humans of Tyrannus Prime, once broken slaves, now warriors reborn, followed the charge. Their stolen rifles barked, their blades found flesh. A woman who had once been dragged through these streets in chains now drove a plasma bayonet into a Dominion officer's throat, twisting the blade with a snarl. Vengeance had found its home. As the Dominion forces collapsed, Darius moved toward their final holdout, a towering obsidian citadel at the heart of the ruined city. It was Warlord Vrykos's personal fortress, a jagged monument to the Dominion's cruelty, built atop the ruins of the planet's former government halls. Through the Vox, a transmission cut in. A deep, inhuman voice, distorted by mechanical enhancements. "So, the dead walk once more." "Vrykos." Darius slowed, scanning the distant citadel. He could feel the warlord's gaze upon him, even from miles away. "I have waited for your kind to return." Vrykos continued. "The legend spoke of your wrath. I see now that they were true." Darius let out a low growl. "Your reign ends today." The warlord chuckled, a sound like grinding metal. "Does it? Look above, Warborn. Look to the heavens." Darius's blood ran cold. High above Tyrannus Prime, space rippled. Massive shapes emerged from the void. Dominion warships, dozens of them, their hulls seething with energy. Reinforcements. Vrykos's voice dripped with amusement. "You have made this battle entertaining, but you are not the only ones who have been waiting for war." The sky turned black with the coming of the enemy, and the final battle began. The sky above Tyrannus Prime writhed with the arrival of the Dominion fleet. Massive warships, twisted, jagged things of black metal and pulsing crimson light, descended like celestial predators. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy, preparing to wipe away everything below in a single merciless bombardment. Darius Voss stood atop the ruins, his gaze locked onto the abyss above. He had expected resistance, but this was an armada. Over the Vox, Riven's voice came in, sharp and measured. "The Dominion wants this planet erased. They won't bother reclaiming it now. They'll burn it down to ash." Darius's grip tightened on Annihilum. The Warborn lords had come to liberate Tyrannus Prime, not turn it into a graveyard. The survivors had fought too hard to be incinerated by orbital fire. "We hold," Darius growled, "no matter the cost." The first bombardment struck. From the Dominion ships, lances of searing plasma rained down, turning entire city blocks into molten craters. The once burning skyline of Tyrannus Prime now became a collapsing inferno. Yet in the heart of the storm, The Warborn lords stood unshaken. Darius barked new orders. Air defenses. Now. Survivors scrambled to activate whatever anti-orbital weaponry remained, half-buried cannons, missile silos long thought useless. A few still functioned, and as their ancient machinery whirred to life, streaks of fire launched skyward. Dominion warships twisted to evade, some struck by missiles, their hulls cracking as explosions rippled across their flanks. But it wasn't enough. From the descending fleet, troop carriers dropped like meteors, unloading wave after wave of Dominion shock troops. Heavily armored warriors clad in segmented exosuits, their visors burning with a cruel red glow. With them came the overlords, biomechanical horrors, each one a fusion of Dominion war beasts and enslaved organic matter, their bodies pulsing with unnatural energy. The final battle had begun. Darius turned to his warriors. We take the fight to them. The Warborn lords charged. The streets erupted into chaos as the two forces collided. Dominion shock troopers unleashed torrents of plasma fire, but the Warborn advanced undeterred. Darius smashed through a squad of enemy soldiers, his hammer caving in their armor like brittle bone. Revan spun through the carnage, his halberd severing limbs and heads with each sweeping strike. But the overlords were something else entirely. One of the monstrous war beasts lunged at Darius, its tendrils crackling with energy. He barely dodged as a clawed limb smashed into the ground beside him, leaving a crater where he had stood. With a snarl, he pivoted, bringing Annihilum up in a brutal arc. The hammer connected, sending a shockwave rippling through the beast's grotesque frame. It shrieked but did not fall. Another overlord crashed into the battle line, impaling the Warborn lord with a bladed tendril before tearing him apart in a spray of gore. They were losing ground. Revan's voice came through the vox, strained but determined. Vrykos is watching from his citadel. He wants us to waste ourselves here. Darius understood in an instant. This was a distraction. He looked toward the black fortress rising in the distance. If they wanted to end this war, they had to cut off the head. Warborn, he roared. With me, we end this now. And with that, they turned toward the citadel, cutting their way through the chaos, marching toward the final reckoning. The black citadel loomed ahead, its obsidian spires twisting toward the burning sky. It was a fortress of nightmares, a place where humanity's suffering had been etched into the walls, where the screams of the enslaved had once echoed through its corridors. It was here that Warlord Vrykos ruled, and it was here that he would die. Darius Voss led the charge, his Warborn lords cutting a bloody path through the Dominion's last defenders. The citadel's gates, once thought impenetrable, were now crumbling beneath relentless fire and hammer strikes. The Warborn did not ask for entry. They tore their way inside. Inside the fortress, the air was thick with the scent of oil, blood, and something far worse, the acrid stench of Dominion bioforges, where prisoners had been twisted into unholy war machines. Great iron corridors stretched before them, lined with flickering crimson lights and sigils of Dominion conquest. And at the end of the grand hall, waiting upon a throne of fused bone and metal, sat him, Warlord Vrykos. His form was monstrous, even by Dominion standards. His exoskeletal armor pulsed with unnatural energy, his elongated limbs ending in barbed talons that dripped with a thick, black fluid. His face, what little remained of it, was a grotesque fusion of Karath biology and stolen human flesh, his stolen features twisted into something neither human nor alien. His voice was a guttural, grinding snarl as he rose to his feet. I have waited centuries for warriors like you, Vrykos rasped, stepping forward. You are different from the weaklings we have crushed before. It will be an honor to break you. Darius leveled Annihilum toward the warlord. You speak of breaking, but I see only something waiting to be broken. Vrykos moved. Faster than his grotesque frame should have allowed, the warlord lunged, a bladed lime slicing through the air. Darius barely dodged, twisting aside as the claw carved through the floor where he had stood. The impact sent debris flying, shattering stone as if it were paper. The throne room became a storm of violence. Riven met the first strike, his halberd crashing against Vrykos' talons, sending sparks flying. Another Warborn Lord charged, only for the warlord to impale him mid-motion, his blade tearing through the warrior's chest before hurling him aside like a broken doll. Darius roared, Annihilum swinging in a deadly arc. A hammer connected with Vrykos' side, sending a shockwave through the throne room. The warlord stumbled, but did not fall. He laughed. "You are strong," Vrykos hissed, black ichor dripping from his maw. "But you fight for a lost cause." He gestured to the chaos outside, where the Dominion fleet still rained fire upon the planet. "Tyrannus Prime will burn. Even if you kill me, you will die with it." Darius wiped blood from his faceplate. "Then we will make sure you die first." With a final, earth-shaking charge, the Warborn Lords struck as one. Raven's halberd pierced through Vrykos' carapace, pinning him in place. Darius leaped, bringing Annihilum down in a two-handed strike. The warhammer connected with the warlord's skull, and with a sickening crack, Vrykos' head caved in. The Dominion warlord collapsed, his body twitching once before going still. For the first time in centuries, the master of Tyrannus Prime was dead. A silence filled the throne room. Then the vox crackled. "My lord," came a voice from orbit. "The unyielding vow has broken through the enemy's blockade. Our guns are targeting the fleet." Darius exhaled slowly. "Then let's finish this." Outside, the skies that had once burned with Dominion fire now blazed with retribution. The Warburn's dreadnought unleashed its fury, tearing into the Dominion fleet. One by one, enemy warships detonated, their once mighty presence reduced to drifting wreckage. The Warborn Lords stepped onto the Citadel's balcony, watching as the Dominion's power crumbled before their eyes. The surviving humans of Tyrannus Prime, once prisoners, now victors, raised their voices in a deafening roar. The world had been freed. Riven turned to Darius. "What now?" Darius looked upon the battlefield, upon the broken Dominion, upon the rising fires of rebellion. "We march," he said. "There are still chains to break." And with that, the Warborn Lords strode into legend once more.